very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. Myself, Vaibhav. In today's session of automated trading, we are continuing to work with our algorithm in which we are utilizing the RSI and the acceleration deceleration oscillator. This is the third part of the ongoing series for which we started working back on Monday, and now here we are going to complete this. Almost we were done with a lot of calculations yesterday, and today we will go into the buy side and the sell side build. So these are the indicators. I hope you are now well familiar with all these three indicators. And then also we are utilizing the historical price action using the candle data. Before we get started, this is the standard disclaimer. Here I would like to remind you once again that this is simply a tutorial session, and no claim is being made regarding the profitability or otherwise of the algorithms which we will be developing during the session. Suppose if you want to use any of it, I would recommend that you do extensive trial runs and also allow it to run on the demo account for sufficient time to get a clear idea of the efficacy of the algorithms. And of course, nothing in the webinar is to be constructed as an advice to trade or for any particular setup. With that, we go to the chart where I would like to explain you the basic underlying idea behind the algorithm. So this is a brief synopsis of what we have been doing so far or what we are trying to achieve. So we are looking at the RSI values and we want the RSI values to be rising at above 50 for the buy trade. For that we will be comparing the last candle's closing value of the RSI to the value 6 hours back, and we will be getting this comparative analysis, and if the RSI value is rising and if the last hour's RSI value is above 50, that means the RSI is in bullish territory with underlying bullish momentum, and now is the time to look for the buy trade. And for the sell trade, the opposite is true. We want the RSI value to be below 50 and the RSI value should be falling. Then we turn our attention to the acceleration deceleration. If the RSI conditions are fulfilled, we will look at the instances where the momentum turns from bearish to bullish on the acceleration deceleration indicator. So earlier values were negative, that is the values were below 0, and then the values are turning, or just this is the first hour, and whenever it closes with value greater than 0, we will be turning for the execution of the trade provided rest of the conditions are fulfilled. And when the rest of the conditions are in sell side, we look for the instances where the acceleration deceleration will take a turn for the bearish momentum, that is its positive values will disappear and the negative values will prop up at such time. Only during the first 1 hour we will be open for the business. That means our algorithm can place the trade, and then we will of course to make it a single point entry or exit, and to minimize the chances of any error, we will also bring in some 10 seconds or 1 minute candles, and then we will compare their closing values and we put in 1 point of the execution. And then arises the question of what should be the optimum stop loss, the target price, the entry price, and for that we have done a lot of calculation yesterday, and we are utilizing the ATR on hourly time frame as well as 4 hourly time frame to get us good entry and exit points where we will have a decent chance of making money. So we get to the setup so far. Here the standard instrument subscription, we are working with the USD JPY. Then the position amount has been set at 0. There is the acceleration deceleration oscillators values. Here we are looking at last hour's closing value and then the prior hour's value. So shift 1 and shift 2, and then we will do comparative analysis. Then comes the RSI. We have these RSI values of last 1 hour and then the 6 hours back. So here also, as I explained to you on the chart, we will be looking at the value of the RSI, then the ATR for the entry point on the hourly time frame, a historical candle to get a clear entry and the exit point and what's happening in the price action just hour back. Then the ATR on the 4 hour for the stop loss and the target price, and we are relying on the 4 hours ATR value to do the job for us. Then here we have done this 60% of the ATR as our desired entry point. We will be deducting the 60% of the hourly ATR from the last hour's candle closing value, and we will be getting the buy entry or the sell entry. Sell entry, we need to add it. For the buy entry, we will be subtracting. We are going to place the limit order. Then we did this calculations for the defining the order validity time. We had kept it for 2 hours. Then we did this calculation for the stop loss and the target price, and I think we have done that for four sorry the half a percentage point of the wait a minute, SLP. Okay, so here is we have done half a percentage point, that is multiplying by 0.5 to the ATR value, and that will give us the 50% of the ATR value, and this is going to be our stop loss, and here 100% of the ATR. So we have not done any changes. I think we are simply going for a multiple of 1, and this we have done to simply explain you the factor. Suppose if you want to increase it, you can just multiply it with a different factor, and then you can make changes. So now is the day we start building the buy side. So we cut it, we will connect it later on. We had just done that to streamline the end of the session yesterday. Now again we start with the fresh build. So for the day we will need two historical candles of 1 minute, and then we will need, okay, we are going to need info. So we get two historical candles here, and we will compare the tick value also to the last hourly candle close, so it will be fine. And now we define this. We will get it bit lower. Hopefully we will be able to complete the algorithm in today's session. I don't think we need to work a lot because we are almost done with the difficult part of getting the calculations right, and now we have to connect the dots. So here okay, we disconnect it and we join it here. Suppose if we see we have missed on anything, any indicator, any calculation, we have space here, we can add it, and we make it 1 minute. We customize it. This we are doing to make it a single entry point. Otherwise what happens, we will have the whole R as our validity time for the order execution, and if there is undue volatility under unforeseen circumstances, we might end up suffering too much of losses, and that is what we want to avoid. And for that we will need to define entry level. Okay, so far so good. Now we bring in the if condition. First thing we will need to do is to look at the RSI values. So we go to info logical. Okay, we got the in if block. We are going to need couple of it. Now we take the RSI value, we compare it to the prior value and it should be greater, and then we look at the RSI value's exact number, and as I said it should be greater, so it is, and then we need to compare it to 50 as we define 50 as a crucial marker between being in the bullish and being in the bearish territory. So here we are. Now we need to look at the acceleration, deceleration, closing values. Now we need these to be greater. Shift 1, that is last hour's closing value, should be in the positive territory. That means it should be greater than 0. When the momentum is bearish, the positive value goes on to become 0 and the negative value starts to fall. And when the momentum is strong, the positive value starts to rise, whereas negative value becomes 0. So all we have to do is take 0 here, and the positive value for the last 1 hour should be greater than 0. And then we look back to the prior candle, negative value, and here also it should be less than 0. So here it should be greater, and in another instance, it should be, it should have been negative, so it should have been less than 0. Now the next thing, we have defined the RSI and the acceleration, deceleration oscillator values. Next thing will be to define the exact entry point and the exit points. We have defined the conditions using these two indicators. Now we need to look at the price action data. So let us connect this and then we go looking for the price action data. Okay. So we have fulfilled or we have defined those conditions. Now comes the moment to look back on the 1 minute candles closing levels. So we take auto created variables and let me get the name for the hourly candle, and that is candle 25. So we will be comparing its closing levels to the closing levels of our two 1 minute candles, and we take first the candle 38 closing level should be less than candle 25 closing level. Then we go again and look at the candle 37. It should have been less. So now candle 37's closing value and candle 37's closing value should be greater than the candle 25's closing value. So far so good. Then we also want to avoid situation where there is too much of an volatility. Because of that, you never know, sometimes when the monetary policy is announced or some steps are taken by fiscal authorities or some unforeseen circumstances, there might be too much of an volatility and we don't want to be suffering, pardon me, we don't want to be suffering too much losses in case we happen to get on the wrong side of the trade. So for that we compare the tick value, and whenever we are looking at so here we will need another if block, and it is going to be tick bid. We need candle 25 closing value, Candle 37 should have been closing higher, and the last active bit. So here we are done with the buy side, so we can almost start to work on the sell side. In today's session we most probably will be able to get it done, and then tomorrow we can work on something new. We will need to arrange the zip blocks like this. The bid should be greater. Candle 37 close should be greater than the candle 25 close, and candle 38 should be less than the candle 25 closing value. So we have added these if conditions on the buy side. Now we need to do the same for the sell side. And as I had explained to you, we just have to flip the conditions towards downwards for a sell trade. So now first we look at the RSI values. So we take RSI 20 and RSI 21, and then we take another A block. Now the RSI value should be should be below 50, and that makes it 20. We want this value to be less. So the first input is less than the second input. And it should be below 50. So we connect a to other A block, and then we define the AC requirement. So we do now, it should be less. Now we turn our attention to the acceleration deceleration oscillator. Let us keep it in one corner, and we take the prior value should have been in positive territory, So we bring in 0 and it should have been greater than 0. First input greater than second input, and then we take the negative value, and it now should be less than 0. So let us get these blocks where they belong. First is negative, so the momentum is now turning into the bearish side, whereas RSI has been falling for quite a while now. So here we have done this for hourly, here we get this. So we have defined the Williams R and the RSI conditions. Now we need to look into the price action, and for that last tick bid or tick ask should be less than the last hour's closing value. At the same time, to define a 1 point entry and exit to avoid multiple cases in case we happen to be wrong. I am also utilizing this candle closer of 1 minute to compare it to the hourly closing. So here we take we look at candle 37, before that candle 38 closing level, and this close should be greater than the candle 25 closing level. Then we want last tick bid to be less than candle close. So for that we are going to need hourly candles closing level. Then we do the comparative analysis. So here we have looked at, and we need to take one more if block, and then I think we are almost done. We can do a bit of test run as well today itself. We might need to extend the session by maybe 2, 3 to 5 minutes, but then we will be mostly done. So again we go to the candle 37 closing value, and it should be less candle 25, and here comes the candle 25. So here we now need to join the dot, no need of that. So we have got and here negative value to be less than 0, and here we need to change this and now the positive value should have been greater, and the RSI value of last 1 hour should have been less than the RSI value towards back, and then we did this comparative analysis. So far things are looking all right. So we join the flow, and now we have to connect this. So here now the RSI value should have been less than 50. Candle 25 closing level, and candle 30 its closing level needs to be compared, and the 37 should have been great. Candle 37 closing value should have been less. That means candle 25 close will be greater, and the last tick bid should be greater than the candle close. Candle 38's closing value should have been okay. Candle 38 is a 1 minute candle. To compare its closing value to the last 1 hour's candle, and it should have been greater. So here we are almost done. Now we can export the file. First we will need to save it, and let me see if I have connected everything. Yes. So the algorithm has been fairly simple, and I think our test run should also be done equally fast. So let me save the file and save the file April 24th. So here we save it. Oh. Save the draft. And we export it to our Visual JFX platform. So here we save our today's developed algorithm, and then we import it to run a test run for maybe a minute or two to see if it is working fine. And let us now go back to our algorithms. Windows C. April 24. Here it is. We got the same file. The code is not that long. It's around 900 lines. We need to compile it first. Compilation successful. And now we test it on last 1 month. Previous, no, 3 months. We don't have that kind of time. Previous month should be good enough. We need to change the currency to Euro USD, to USD JPY, as we have been working with the USD JPY. So now we get it running. Run. So here we are. If it is too slow, we will stop it maybe after a minute, and then sign off, and we will be back tomorrow for the first session. But just hold on for a few seconds to see what kind of orders are executed by our algorithm on which we have worked so much. Being an algorithm based on hourly setup, I think you should be able to test it fairly quickly, and maybe that will be a better idea. Um, for tomorrow's session, we will be working with something fresh, something different. So, guys, as you can see, I have tested it for 2 days, and we have also compiled it. So there, it was fine. The algorithm has been developed well. Now it will need to see what kind of results it generates, and then if we need to do further optimization, I leave it that to you, and you should take a call depending on your requirements. Suppose if you want to use any of the modification. But I hope you have learned how to build it, and you can replicate it anytime you want. You can of course always utilize these videos which are there in our Udacoscopy YouTube channel. So thank you all for joining in. See you tomorrow, guys. Goodbye.